Welcome to the Thinking Out Loud podcast, where I talk about research, note taking, personal knowledge management, and learning how to learn. My name is Bianca Pereira, and now our goal here is just to start a conversation. So I'm literally thinking out loud. In this episode, I want to talk a little bit of the relationship between intellectual autonomy and research, PKM, note taking, learn how to learn, all those things. It came from my own journey in trying to identify what is this that I'm trying to talk about, because I really believe that we should own our thinking. Okay, we should be responsible for our thinking, but also be free to question what other people are saying. Ah, this is the truth, but like, why do you believe it is the truth? I have heard over the years so many times people saying things that make no sense or that feel good. So it feels like there is something good in what the person is saying, but they're not actually saying the truth. And when you look around, we see everywhere nowadays, people are just like accepting. There is so much information that people stop thinking. They're like, wow, I will just accept what people are saying and live on with my life. keep up with the hamster wheel and keep going. So I would like to live in a different world, a world where we reflect on what we are hearing, we are more accepting of other perspectives, because we know that we are not always right, or we are always learning. So we become more accepting, more like we're open for questioning. If someone say, "Well, I'm not sure if what you say is correct," and they're like, "Okay, let me hear from you." So I would like to live in that world. So for a long time, I was like, well, the solution for that is research. Okay. And every time I talk about research, then people are like, okay, then that's for academics. And I was like, no, that's not what I mean. That's, to me, like, that's the ability to learn by yourself. Okay. That's what research is really. It's like, okay, how can I investigate? Uh, how can I investigate knowledge by myself? Okay, exploring, learning from others, putting ideas together from different sources, analyzing the data or the things that are presented to me, even as an observation. So for me, okay, research is the thing. Okay, then there is a practice of note taking. Okay, some people will say note making. It doesn't matter the name that you like to use. The idea is like writing down our thoughts, and the importance is not to write down our thoughts, not like to keep like a external memory, but it's a process of making sense of our thoughts through writing. Okay, because by making our thoughts visible through note taking, that's when we can see our thoughts, and we empty our minds rather than trying to remember everything and make sense of everything all at the same time. We can take what we have in our minds, put in front of our faces, okay, like, because we can now look at what you wrote, and then empty our minds so we can reason about our thoughts. Okay, and it's very interesting in the process of writing down our thoughts. If you're not just note takers in highlighting, copy pasting, or writing a reminder, for example, which is what people who are focused on productivity usually do, and that's not what I mean by note taking. If instead we are writing down our thoughts, exploring what our thinking is, that's when comes the time where we started noticing, oh, this idea came to my mind. How come? Okay, and that's the type of note taking that I'm talking about. It's more like thinking through writing. Okay, that's what I mean by note taking. Okay, and of course, like, some people think better through writing, and some people think better through speaking. Okay, so we can think about voice notes as note taking. Even in this, thinking out loud is a form of note taking to me. Okay, so that's another way. Okay, if you want to have this world where people think more, it's like, are we engaged with our thoughts? Do you even know what you're thinking? You are thinking the whole day. Most people are thinking the whole day. Do you even know your thoughts? We think we know, but then when you start writing, just let the thoughts come rather than guide the thoughts. Interesting things happen. Okay, and I have seen over time. So what was always interesting to me is that many people who are professional researchers, they're kind of like they resist to note taking a little bit, but then I start to show what you can do with that. Okay, maybe I want that. And people who are note takers, maybe they take journals, they write journals, they take like morning pages and things. Then they are resistant to the word research because this is too systematic, it's too rigid. It's not the case, okay? And then there are the PKMers, like personal knowledge management, right? Yeah. It's like if you have been taking notes for a while, explore your thoughts for a while, you probably have a pile of notes. And then how can I grow the ideas that we have in those notes? How can I organize them? How can I find them again? If I took notes in relation to something I read, something I watched, how can I find that source again? It becomes a mess. So personal knowledge management is just a very weird name, maybe, for organizing our notes. I like to call it a knowledge practice because there's a lot more involved in that. Uh, and I don't like to see that as just organizing my notes. Instead, I like to think about organizing my ideas, okay? My understanding of my sources, the thoughts that came to mind, and literally organizing, taking those thoughts that I wrote down and organize them as ideas, okay? Then for a long time, I was like, well, I'm talking about research, but it's not really research. I'm not teaching like, okay, let's do a literature review just for the sake of writing a paper in a conference and get a better age index. I'm not talking about that. But whatever I talk about research can help with that. I'm not talking about only notes taking, yes, thinking through writing, but there is more. What are you thinking about? What are the ideas there are in those things? I'm talking about personal knowledge management, but it's not just about the tools. It's not about okay, which tool is better, how to tag a given node. It's not about that, and yet all those things are kind of together, and that's where I start to feel okay. What is the point? What's the real thing that you want to make? And that's where intellectual autonomy came from. Okay, intellectual autonomy is our ability. Uh, to decide what you think is our even desire. Start with a desire. I desire to have autonomy over my thoughts. Okay, I don't want to just be influenced by other people's thoughts, other like advertisement, doom scrolling, all those things. So that's the whole point. Is actually knowing what I think, note taking, be able to organize that visually, make it easier for me to understand my own thoughts, personal knowledge management, and in developing the skills of engaging with my knowledge. And that's the research skill side. It's like, how can I read a source? How can I interpret what other people are saying? How can I know my thoughts in relation to what other people are saying? How can I grow my ideas? Okay, I have an idea. Okay, how can I improve that? How can I connect ideas? How can I connect source? How can I understand when people are disagreeing to each other? How can I learn? So that's the whole process. This is really the process of like learning how to learn. Okay, learn how to learn. Yeah. So that's kind of like that's what research really is. But there's also the methods and everything. Okay. Uh, so intellectual autonomy is what bring those three things together. Okay. And what is interesting is that you find researchers who don't care about intellectual autonomy, which is very strange. We would expect that probably there are very few people, but they're like, well, I'm here doing my research, get my papers, and building my profile. That's it. I don't care if someone is saying what I should be thinking about. They usually don't thrive very well in research, but it's possible. Note taking, there are a lot of people in note taking who don't care about intellectual autonomy. Um, they are not necessarily taking notes to understand their thoughts. They are trying to summarize their sources, or the notes taking is reminders or is tasks. It's more for productivity's sake rather than learning and developing your thoughts. Okay. Some people have a mix, or they want intellectual autonomy, but they are not really using their note taking for that. And personal knowledge management is the same thing. You can have a whole system like automated with tasks and AI and this and that, but the goal is not intellectual autonomy. So I think like at the end, the community we are trying to put together are the people who care about intellectual autonomy, And if you think about this community, there is way more than research, notes taking, personal knowledge management. Okay, there is self-awareness. Okay, there's self-awareness. There is metacognition. It's kind of related, like learn how to learn. Cognition is like thinking about thinking. Okay, so that's actual learning how to learn. Yeah, we can talk about how can you communicate. There's communication. How can you communicate our thoughts? Okay, how can you debate our ideas? There is about like there are so many things. There's like all things related to writing. Well, it will be communication as well. So when you focus on the goal, which is have intellectual autonomy, then what is everything related to intellectual autonomy? How does intellectual autonomy relate to the other autonomies? How can I get money from my thoughts? Okay, from what I'm understanding, from what am I learning? How can I have creative autonomy, like create things with my knowledge? Okay, how can I create assets out of my knowledge? Okay, so the whole idea, so that's how in this thinking out loud, that I say I talk about research, talk about note taking, personal management, learn how to learn. That's how they relate to the whole topic of intellectual autonomy. That's it for today, and I hope to see you in the next time. The Thinking Out Loud podcast is a spin off of the Thinking Cafe, a home for independent learners who wants to build the skills, the systems, and the practice of intellectual autonomy. So, if you want to engage in more discussions about the topics that we are talking about here and have access to exclusive Think Out Loud episodes, just join us at thinkingcafe.co. I hope to meet you there.